I am Jim Collison, and this is the Clifton Strengths Podcast, Season 3, recorded on November 17th, 2023. In this Clifton Strengths Podcast series, we'll look at how to feel more energized and motivated at work, one theme at a time. And today's theme is adaptability. If you're listening live, you can join us in the chat room for maybe mid and post show stuff. If you have questions after the fact, you can always send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Dr. Jaclynn Robinson is our host today. She works as a senior learning, I don't know why I'm having trouble talking today, and development consultant, maybe because it's Friday, and joined me for season 1 and 2 of the Clifton Strengths podcast, where we looked at well-being at work, the book, and the Clifton Strengths role-based reports, the actual reports that are in Gallup Access. Jaclynn, always great to see you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Jaclynn, we're talking this season about bringing energy to work, which I think I
Yeah.
don't think we knew this was going to be as big of a deal as it is, but I think as we release these in 2024, I think we're going to have
Yes.
a challenging year ahead, right? And so thinking about bringing energy, bringing engagement into those things that we do
Yeah.
is super exciting. So as we talk about adaptability, let's start with the individual first, and we'll talk maybe about some manager roles. What are some ways an individual with this adaptability can feel more energized by maybe focusing on their basic needs?
Yeah, I think the first piece for someone with adaptability, I love that whole go with the flow approach that they have, but maybe connecting with the manager initially to understand what those key priorities are so that they can aim their additional strengths at what needs to get done, but then have that wherewithal and flexibility to go with the flow for the remainder of the day. So maybe they make sure, first of the morning I'm tackling this basic need, or this key priority. But then after that, it's okay, now where do I want to go? Do I want to do this or do I want to do this? So I think there's got to be that balance to some degree, because with basic needs, everyone needs role clarity no matter what talent theme you have to know that you're focusing on the right thing. But at least having that clarity then gives you, like I said, the freedom to be able to go with the flow in those other areas.
Yeah, might be an area where with adaptability, they need to be keenly aware of their basic needs to make sure
Yeah.
that it's not just because it can adapt or adjust to many situations. And again, it all depends on where
Mhm.
it lands and what surrounds it, right? Every
Yeah.
once in a while, you see adaptability and discipline together, but in a lot of
Yeah.
cases, just being keenly aware of what do I need in these situations, because we can that can get pushed away, or in the desire to go with the flow and the desire to
Mhm.
be in the middle of it all. And that's kind of I think of it, if I think about it, the river, they want to stay in the middle no matter where the courses of the river is going, and can do it. If it
Yeah.
curves, they're able to stay in the middle. If it goes straight, they're able to stay in the middle, right? And be comfortable in that. So that keen awareness of their basic needs, right? Of maybe doing some things to make sure they themselves are getting getting it taken care of, right? We've done a lot of work in burnout,
Yes.
and so it could be easy for those things to get neglected. I don't know. Would you add anything to that?
Well, I love what you just said, because it reminds me, there is that balance. So if they know what their key priorities are, another angle that they could take with high adaptability that gives them that freedom and flow is to say, do I want to work on this key priority right now
Mhm.
or this key priority right
Mhm.
now?
Mhm.
And so just make sure you have clarity on the key responsibilities or priorities that you need to cover. And then in the day, it doesn't matter if you're doing this one or this one, they're both of importance.
Yeah.
Unless there's maybe that key deadline and you have to go by deadline instead
Well, and maybe that's the awareness. The special
that you were
skill in this
mentioning.
is understanding, having the awareness to know in the moment what are those priorities, and
Mhm.
can I move with them to get
Mhm.
maximum effectiveness in what we're
Yes.
trying to do, right? So, Jacqueline, as we think about the individual, continue to think about the individual. What are some ways we can feel energized by focusing on individual strengths and development? What we may have alluded a little bit to that in the last answer, but continue to think through that area of development.
Um, I think one aspect, they love living in the present moment. And so, one thing that they could do to start gauging where their joy and energy is and how they can, really pull that into a development plan, make a note. So, when you're just in your day to day, what pay, because they're so present, pay attention to those present emotions and then think to yourself for a moment, what am I doing? Like, what's creating this level of joy and energy for me right now? And just jot it down on a notepad. Whenever you have that next one on one meeting with your manager, now you have a collection of thoughts of those different responsibilities you've had throughout, days. And then you can, tabulate it with your manager and come up with a developmental plan that feels really suitable to you. Might not be something that is necessarily top of mind if we think about adaptability as just a straight theme, because there is
Mhm.
that present moment versus thinking about the future and where do I maybe see myself in the future. But you're going to help your manager get a lot of really good, juicy material and feedback if you're taking notes in that immediate present moment that you can then provide to them. They can start to make meaning of it and see, oh, well, when you work on this particular project or you're involved in this particular responsibility, you seem to really love it. We do have, some skills training or a potential role that you might want to continue to learn and grow in. And so they can really support you. But that additive effect of giving them some notes can help since you tend to live in that present moment and not think too much about the past
Mm.
and what you've done or the future and where you could go.
Mm. Love that. Love those thoughts. I think I have adaptability 7 for my own development. I try to put myself in situations that takes advantage of that.
Hmm.
And so new opportunities, thinking through new problems where things are going to change. I love to be on teams where things are
Yes.
changing all the time, type deal. Not, and I
Yeah.
can't do it 100% of the time. I do need some stability. I need some stability and expectations, just to be honest. Like, I need a little bit of that stability there, but
Yeah.
challenging myself and keeping my schedule clear enough that I can be adaptable in those situations. Look, if I'm booked all day, I
Mhm.
can't be adaptable, right? When somebody needs
Yes.
something right away. So I've got to be proactive in
That'd be so
keeping some
restrictive.
space available. It's a great feeling when somebody calls and they're like, "I know I'm bothering you," and I say, "I can help you right now." Like
Yes.
that's right. That's a
Yes. That's
that's
when
a
you're
great,
on fire.
and it doesn't work for everybody. Nobody. So there are people like, "No, I want to think this through," and I'm, "No, no, let's just kind of let's do this. Let's do this in the moment." So that's how I set it up
Yes.
to make sure some of those kinds of things, or at least that I'm available for it, and that energizes me. I walk
Mhm.
away from those every single time and go, "I'm pumped. Let's continue to let's continue to do more." I want to be fighting fires, not farming.
Yes.
Right, and I've said that several
Yes.
times on the podcast. What are some ways an individual with adaptability can feel energized by building partnerships and finding purpose in the role? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Ooh, I think you just highlighted it, perfectly. Someone high in adaptability is so good at creating that level of calm on a team, and the purpose that they can bring even to partnerships is grounding them in that present moment, allowing them to kind of feel through what's happening and say, well, let's figure out a way, let's get through this together. So they can be such a wonderful partner in crime, especially for those that like a little bit more stability or structure when change occurs, because that person high in adaptability can say, well, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Let me give you a big picture of how I see this going. Because either path we take could be great, but this isn't necessarily burdensome.
Yeah.
And they can bring others to that cool, calm, and collect mental state. So I
So
think they're really adept at partnerships in that regard,
you,
being the
you
firefighter.
sorry, like
Oh, no, you're good.
I'm
I'm
being too
sorry.
adaptable
I'm
here
getting
today.
excited. Yeah.
You make me think of being in the eye of the storm, and from time to time, it's calm in there, but all
Mhm.
around you,
Mhm.
it's right, and then, but you can't stay in it. From time to time, you've got to get out of it, come back into it. But that's thrilling. That's exciting. That's energizing. That brings,
Yes.
for me, this is that thing. For me, it's easy to think that way and to think everybody loves that. And oftentimes, and we're going to talk about the manager here in just a second.
Mhm.
I try to take teams on that journey, and they're not. I forget they're not all wired that way. Some of them want to know into things in advance. Like,
Yes.
where are we going, and what are we doing? Those kinds of things in advance. Let's dive into
Yeah.
the manager a little bit. When we think about a manager with adaptability, how and I just admitted maybe some of the errors of my ways as a manager, but
Don't do
how
this.
can I use that better, using me as an example to meet the basic needs of the team?
Well, a manager can take control of the situation. So when there is an obstacle that arises or resources that are desperately needed, then that person high in adaptability as a manager can make sure that they just um, jump right into it so that they can keep that workflow progressing forward. So that go with the flow mentality can literally help progress the flow of the work. Because they go, "Hey, I've got this. Don't worry. What are your needs? Okay. Let's flag it for IT. Let's flag it for, whomever necessary, and let's identify a workaround in the meantime."
In our 5 coaching conversations, we have this idea of a quick connect, and I think as a manager, thinking about the basic needs of those that they manage, I think that quick connect tool becomes very, very powerful, or
Mhm.
could become very, very powerful. And using that to get to feel or gauge the energy of their teams on a
Yeah.
very regular basis, to be able to say, "Hey, how are you feeling today? I know we talked about this yesterday. Let's talk
Mhm.
about it again. Like, how are you feeling? How's this going?" And maybe even uh, sense how the team is doing in those some of areas. But I
Yes.
feel like that quick connect would be a great opportunity. I don't know. Any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that quick connect idea because it takes place anywhere. It could take place at any time and on any platform. So it's completely flexible for someone with adaptability that likes to flex. But I love that because it does give you the pulse point to know, do they know what their key priorities or responsibilities are for today? Do they have any barriers or resources getting in the way of their productivity? And then how can I come in and support if necessary?
Mm, yeah. Oh, can you would you repeat those again? Can you put that in that order again? Say it again.
Yes. So whenever they are checking in, it's a good temperature or pulse for a team, and they can essentially identify, do you have the clarity of the
Yeah.
responsibilities and priorities right now?
Yeah.
And do you have the barriers? Are there any barriers or
Yeah.
resources that are
Yeah.
getting in the way of your success right now?
Yeah.
And then how can I support?
How could I
And someone
support
with
that?
adaptability will jump right in and get those basic needs met.
Yeah, and maybe sensing though too when there are team members who need that stability of providing that in a way that may be counterintuitive to them.
Hmm.
How do I create this stability for their basic needs while I'm flying around the outside of this thing? Maybe
Yes.
as a manager, how am I creating something in the center for those that need stability? So
Yes.
I love that. Let's transition to that to think then how can adaptability help others feel seen, heard, and valued?
Yes. I think of adaptability, given that present moment that they can sit in, managers that have this high do so well at saying, "How are you today?" And just checking in. And you mentioned this, you tease this out, so you can see it within yourself of just, it's that easygoing nature of, "How are you today?" And they can allow people to feel so relaxed in their presence, and they allow that level of vulnerability for them to share out what is going on in their life, for better or for worse. So I love that because it helps really drill people down to live in that present moment or just feel it for a moment and go, "Oh, wait, yeah, how am I doing? Where do I maybe need support? Where am I feeling my own level of energy and joy?" So those in adaptability, because they live so present, I think they just do that so well.
Mm. I think in my own role, I answer questions around the globe, regardless of the hours. As long as I'm not
Hmm.
sleeping, I'm probably answering questions. And it allows, what I think it allows people with this idea of being seen and heard, and to do it so quickly. Like, hey, I've
Hmm.
got this question right now. How do I do this? And I think most
Hmm.
people expect it's going to be a day or two, maybe three, before I hear back. Boy, if it's been 3 days since you've heard from me, I've already forgotten about you. So by the way, coaching community, you send me an email and it's 3 days, something's terribly wrong and I have forgotten. So that's just the way I work, right? But
Hmm.
it helps. Well, let's
You're very
parlay
important.
that into this idea of how can you use adaptability as a manager to build trust, inspire, and deepen team collaboration and community. Talk a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk about how that fits in.
I think about I think about if they have an eye towards excellence and they see where they need to steer the ship as a manager for their team, they can have that pretty adept flexibility to say, "Ooh, I think this partnership would be well, so I want to pair maybe this person and this person together," or this person feels like they might be struggling. I know someone in an and I don't want this to sound like woo, but it's more of that
Right.
being so present of seeing maybe what teams are doing what partners are doing what to say, maybe I can pair these together and then they can form that adept partnership to, put forth quality work. Um, they can also just create a lot of openness in team meetings for them to share out what's working and what isn't working. So within the moment, if they are have this big project. Let's say a team has a big project on their plate. You've got the manager in the room. Okay, well, let's just talk about it. What are your needs? Let's think about some workaround solutions. As a manager, they naturally have more of that bird's eye view, I'll call it, of who's doing what across an organization. And so they might know someone else that they can loop in to support the team. So
Mhm.
they have a level of flexibility, I think, that allows the team to feel less pressured to, just sit in their own pigeonhole. It's, well, let's just figure out there's workarounds. We've got this. Let's partner together. Let's partner with other people. Let's, you know, consider workarounds. How do you
Mhm.
see it work for you?
Well,
I
as
should
you were
have asked you.
talking about that, I was thinking, we spend a lot of time in software thinking about agile software development and going
Yes.
through that iterate those some of those iterations quickly. And I think they're in team settings, a
Yes.
manager with high adaptability can be agile with the creation or separation of teams and saying, "Hey, I need the two of you to work together. Let's see how that goes."
Mm-hmm.
Setting the expectations that this may rapidly change, but we want to see, let's try some things out of these group settings to see how much success we have, and we can turn on a dime, right?
Yes.
And and I think sometimes for some people that creates some trust, in in the midst of change, ironically, stability, because they feel
Yes.
like
Yes.
my manager knows this may change, therefore it is okay if it does. Oftentimes we think in the midst of change, you and I were talking a little bit about this in pre-show, just not knowing it's gonna be what the changes are gonna be, or how are people gonna respond to them? How's the manager gonna
Mm-hmm.
respond to those changes can be difficult, right? And so building that community may be just saying, change is okay. I'm here. I'm gonna help you through this. You're not gonna fall out somewhere in the process, right? I don't know. Before the last
Yes.
question, any additional thoughts on that? I think this is an important one.
You beautifully said what I was thinking in my head in terms of an example,
Yeah.
because you can hear that element of, there's freedom and flexibility. And
Mhm.
sometimes, even if you're the most stable, disciplined person, you need to know that you've got freedom to just play around with something and be more agile in a role, or have those cross collaborations. And that in itself builds relationships because you're giving people the freedom to work across departments. You're giving them the freedom to maybe work in different partnerships and explore it. Let's think about what's working, what isn't. And beyond that, when I think about adaptability, you're also just building relationships with individuals. You're giving them the freedom to
Yeah.
just be themselves or be in that space and live in the present moment. So, yeah, that in itself builds trust and rapport.
I'm going to channel Kurt for a second and I'm going to say these words: flexible intentionality, right?
Yeah.
This idea of like, because as a manager, it can't just be a free for all, right?
Mhm.
It's got to have some intentionality to it, but at the same time, it's got to be able to bend and flex, or pivot and everyone okay with that,
Mhm.
when we think about the growth of team members, then, because this seems a little counterintuitive with adaptability in some ways. We're like, well, if we're always changing, how can we be growing? Talk a little bit
Yeah.
about here on this final question, how do you support the growth of each team member with adaptability?
Um, they can be really supportive of team members by giving them the freedom to discover their own path towards professional growth. And then whenever they're on that path, there's freedom to course correct. If they've gotten a little, outside their lane of where they wanted to take their career or where they saw their role going. Hey, if they like that path, you've got someone high in adaptability that says, well, let's try it out if that's something that's of interest to you. But if they do want to get back on course, someone high in adaptability can, quickly help them um, find those new opportunities, put some new milestones in place, and then just help them consider what's the immediate first step that you can take. Because living in the present moment, we're going to have that individual development plan. You're going to have your own
Mhm.
freedom, but what's the
Mhm.
first step that you want to take today that I can
Yeah,
support you with?
I love it.
So I would say team members don't have to feel boxed in by their development plan. Like, oh, we set this at the beginning of the year and now we're stuck on it. You've got a manager that's going to be a little bit more flexible and help you reach that path that you see for yourself.
Yeah, and I think realizing you're working with a manager with high adaptability gives some of that freedom, but then sets an expectation of communication
Hmm.
because it can't be chaos.
Yeah.
This is not everybody doing
Choose
what
your
they
own
want.
adventure all the
Right.
time.
No, we gotta kinda keep it in line, but having that constant communication back with the manager and then understanding that both taking advantage of it
Yeah.
from an employee standpoint and then understanding it from a team perspective of saying for some of those team members who are like, "Man, it seems like things are changing all the time," to say, "Well, they are, but here's how we're taking advantage of it, and here's how it's working from a team setting." Jaclyn, I think that's a
Yeah.
maybe a good place to end this. One more final thought from you. Anything else you wanna say before I wrap this up today?
Yes, I'd say someone with adaptability is really good at just exuding a relaxed presence and a reassuring attitude. And that in itself can help people feel so grounded. It can help them feel re energized if they're going through a tough time. It can help them feel re energized if they're going through a great time because you have someone that's just there in the moment with you. So if you have it as an individual or a manager, there really is so much value that you bring in helping others feel seen, heard, and recognized in that immediate moment.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, with that, we'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have in Gallup Access. Head out to my.gallup.com. Stay up to date with everything that we do on social media just by searching Clifton Strengths for coaching, master coaching, or to become a Gallup certified strengths coach. You can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. We'll get right back to you. And then don't forget the Gallup at Work Summit for 2024 is coming up. If you're listening to this after June of 2024, it's probably we have the next one in planning. But head out to gallupatwork.com, get registered today. It's going to be a dynamite one. And join us there. Stay up to date on all future webcasts by joining our Facebook groups. And like I mentioned on social media, you can find us by just searching Clifton Strengths. If you found this helpful, we'd ask you that you share it and want to thank you for joining us today. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.